gentleman who's originally from America and spends a lot of time in Europe and Eastern Europe, traveling around the world talking about something he's very passionate about, good vegetarian food. No? He's a good cook too, he's been cooking here. but Dhanvesvara Das, that's a spiritual name given to him by his spiritual master, also my spiritual master. Prabhupada has a little deity there. So he'll tell you more about what he's going to talk about tonight. So we'd like to welcome Dhanvesvara.
Thank you all for coming tonight. Is anybody here for the first time? Okay, welcome. And for those first-timers, are you familiar at all with Bhagavad Gita? Yes? Yes? Oh, good. Okay, that makes our job a lot easier. Great, because my thesis is based on Bhagavad Gita. Let's start with understanding that the powers that be are not going to be able to solve the economic problem. Okay? Why is that? Because they're not asking the right question. We're creating a lot of problems, and because we're our system, which is actually a good system, has been abused. There's a lot of cheating that is rampant in the financial system today. And so some people are trying to scam the system and at the same time have it work for everybody else. But it doesn't do that. So they're trying to keep it together with, quantitative easing, that's what they call it now, things like that. They're trying different things, they're reaching into their bag of tricks, trying to control the price of gold and silver and so on. But all these things, ultimately, they're going to fail. And there's going to be probably a big price to pay for all this. It's not impossible to save the situation, however. That depends on who's going to take action. So, like I said, let's understand economics in two parts. Okay? First of all, economics means how do people get the things that they want and need. Right? So we produce something, and then we exchange it with other people, and then we get what we need. So production and distribution of goods and services, this is what generally goes on under the name of economics and the study of economics. But there's an important part, the most important part of the whole understanding, which is entirely neglected, completely. Because we have electricity in the room. It's a natural science. There's gravity, physics, chemistry. These things are all natural sciences. Economics, not a natural science. However, they may like to think that. It doesn't actually work that way. So, what's the missing part of the economic question? The human beings that create it. It's a man-made system. So there's two parts to economics. There's human beings and all these things that they create that goes on in the name of economics. So two parts. And of those two parts are our powers that be, all our bankers and politicians, they're dealing just with the economic part. And they're not thinking about the people part. The economic part by itself isn't going to be able to solve the problem. So what I'm doing, I'm talking about the other side, the people part. And I explain economics as a function of human consciousness, or conscious behavior. We are all conscious beings, and how we think about the world, how we live in the world. Oh, well, let's see, we see people that live in the world in so many different ways. Human behaviors all over the landscape, from saints to devils. And so when we talk about, well, how are we going to deal with the human side of the economic equation, it becomes real challenging, because how are you going to figure out people, right? They've been trying to do that for a long time, and still we don't have, let's say, psychology is still also not one of those perfect sciences. We have help, however. We have help from the Vedic culture. Now, every culture gives us tools with which we use to live in this world. Those tools are words and the concepts that are associated with them. So we each, from the time that we're infants, we're trained up in the culture. We learn words, ideas, concepts, and the culture works because all of us carry around with us the same idea of the culture in our heads. If we go to another country, for example, and we find there that it's easy to make a mistake because the things that worked well back home, they don't work so good over there, right? People have a different way of seeing and understanding things. The Vedic culture really helps us out in solving a lot of problems of modern life, because it gives us different words. And along with those different words, different ideas and concepts with which we can get a different perspective on this world. Just like if, we've all seen the mouse, right, in the maze looking for the cheese. And for the mouse, he's just seeing a bunch of walls, and he's smelling some cheese someplace and trying to figure out which way to go. The lab technician, he's got a different perspective. He knows exactly where the cheese is, and he knows, yes, you just go this way, and very easily you got it. The Vedic culture gives us that perspective. It lifts us up. It gives us the top-down perspective so that we can see and understand this world in ways that our Western languages, they don't give us the tools for understanding. So that's what I want to talk about tonight. Some of the Sanskrit words that are important in this. Now, there's a lot of them. Bhagavan, Jiva, Samsara, Karma, maybe you know that one. Gunas, Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. A lot of these different words. And they have meaning. They don't have exact English equivalents. But we're able to understand it with, a definition and explaining. So what I want to do is share with you some of these words, the explanation of some of these words, and then use that as a method by which to look at our economic problem. Okay? So we're going to start with Jiva. Jiva means us. Okay? More specifically, us as spiritual beings. Okay? The Western culture, depending upon your background, most people here from Judeo-Christian background, and we have some concept of that we are the body, or we're a spiritual being, or some combination thereof, but it's still a little fuzzy. Actually, I read a very interesting statistic around the turn of the century, that some 60% of the people had by that time accepted and understood that they are something beyond the body. Call it spirit or soul, whatever you want. Now that's a remarkable thing, because when I took up the spiritual path when I was a young man, Srila Prabhupada, my spiritual master, he was the only person who was very clearly explaining that we are not the body. Nobody else in the early 70s was saying such things so clearly. And over that 30 years till the turn of the century, we've seen people, they've got some idea, okay, I'm a spiritual being. We read books about near-death experiences, or what was that television show that they had? Crossing Over? Was that it? Something like that. So we see these things. In our culture, they come to us and they give us this idea that, yes, there's some kind of spiritual element that we are, but what that is, we're a little fuzzy on. Now the Vedas, they explain that very clearly. Vedas explain that the jiva is what's called, some more Sanskrit words, Sat Chit Ananda. Consciousness, which is eternal, never born, never dies, full of knowledge, and by nature, blissful. Happy, blissful. And so this is our actual nature. However, we're put into a material condition here, which we have a temporary body. We only acquire knowledge with effort, and bliss or happiness, that seems to be quite elusive for a lot of us. We're always chasing after it. How am I going to find that happiness that I want? It's not so easy to achieve. Or it's flickering, it comes and then it goes. We actually are looking for knowledge, happiness, and we don't want to die because deep down inside we understand what our actual spiritual nature is. We remember that. And so we're looking for it, but we're looking in a material situation in which the things that we want, they can't be found here. This is the root cause of the economic problem. Why am I as a spiritual being in a material world? And how does that material world, that material energy, this energy that surrounds us, how is that affecting me? It does have an effect. How we deal with the things of this world, how we live in this world, it affects us. I'll give you a very simple example. A drug abuser versus an athlete. They may be both men of color or not. One is abusing his body, the other one is training his body. Two different consciousness develop. We see two different ways of seeing and understanding. So this is a matter of gunas, and we're going to come back to that a little bit. But first, let's talk about ananda, bliss. I want to be blissful. I want to be happy. How am I going to find that? And we all know there's different kinds of happiness. The drug abuser, he thinks, yeah, that's some kind of happiness. He thinks that's happiness. And other people, they have a different standard of happiness. So which is going to determine what kind of happiness that I go for? And what effect does it have on me, and what effect does it have on the world, or on other people? There's another part of my identity in this world, which is also very important. And in Sanskrit, some more Sanskrit words, aham, ahankara, and aham mameti. Ahankara means I. And specifically, I am the doer. I work, I do some activity, I get some result, and I want to keep that result for myself. That's aham mameti. And we can translate this simply as I and mine. I am the body, I'm active, I'm the doer, I'm creating the results of my activity, and I want to enjoy the result of my activity. That's why I'm active, because I want the result. That result in Sanskrit is called karma, or fruitive activity. I want the result, So I'm active, and it's mine. Now, how much is mine? As I get more, I think I am more. Right? I'm a millionaire, you're just a pauper. I'm better than you. I have a big car, you have a small car. I'm better than you. I have a big house on the hill, you have a little house down in the valley. I'm better. I have a big bank balance, you have a small bank balance. I'm better. This goes on. This kind of thinking goes on. There's a book written a long time ago, about 40 years ago. Rich and the Super Rich. And in this book, the author was explaining that the super rich, the 1%, I guess we call it these days, they do think they are different. They have a different conception of self. They do think they are better and different from the rest of us. But actually, they're still just jivas. So this is called maya, or illusion. Another Sanskrit word. I'm working hard, I'm acquiring all this, I build myself up, I've got so much stuff, and then what? Death comes, finished. It's all left behind. Which proves that my claim to ownership is false. I can't own anything because I can't keep it. It's all left behind. So this is called Maya. I have this conception of life, an illusory conception of life, that I'm going to get more and more and more, and I'm going to become perfect, powerful, and happy. So in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, he explains this psychology. He explains it as being asuric, or demonic, actually. It's actually not too strong a word. We sometimes shy away from such words. Demons, or demonic. Yeah, it's actually a fact. Because Lord Krishna explains there that the demonic, they engage in unbeneficial, horrible works meant to destroy the world in their attempt to get more and more and more. We have so many examples of that today, don't we? Monsanto. Monsanto, if you're a farmer, you must buy your seeds from Monsanto. You don't have a right to save seed. In other words, you work for Monsanto. You don't have a right to be a free person. There's many, many examples of that. Terminator seeds. Monsanto's such a good example. But it epitomizes this consciousness. I want to get more and more and more. And there are people, they want to get in the whole world, they want to control the whole world. We hear about those conspiracy theories of the one-worlders. Whether it's a theory or not is a subject of discussion. But the fact is that that mentality is there. This is actually the root cause of the economic problem. We're lost to our own spiritual identity, our own understanding of who I am. We've adopted a ahankara, a false ego, that if I get more, I am more. But all of that stuff that I have still can't satisfy me, right? All those things that I bought at the mall last week, or last month, or last year that were so good. Oh, I'm so happy to get that, right? We get it home and we got a new toy or whatever, new clothes. And now what? They don't do us any good. We have to go back to the mall again and get something else. There's no amount of material things that can satisfy the spiritual being. Very important lesson. When we begin to understand that, then we can begin to deal with how we are living in this world. And live in the world in a way which is what they call now sustainable. And how are we going to do that? That's the question. How are we going to do that? Because I want satisfaction, I want happiness, I want satisfaction. Where am I going to get it? If I can't find it among all this stuff, right? We talk in America, we have stuff. Where's it going to come from? Real happiness comes from within. It's our nature. We don't have to go looking outside for it if we learn how to connect with our own nature within. And this is the path to solving the economic problem. So I said the powers that be, they're not going to solve the economic problem. So then who is? We are. We have to. Because it's a matter of changing that consciousness. Changing the consciousness changing the consciousness of the world by what I as an individual do, what I as an individual contribute to the consciousness, the overriding consciousness of the entire world. So Michael Jackson, you may remember that young man. He had one good song at least that I like. He said, if you want to change the world, you have to start with the man in the mirror. And yeah, that's very, very appropriate. How am I going to change myself? Because when I change myself, I'll change other people around me. And we'll gradually evolve the consciousness of the planet so that it's not leading us to chaos. This then brings us to the concept of the gunas. The gunas are the qualities of material energy. Everything in this material world has particular qualities. Now, and they can be divided roughly into three categories, which are goodness, passion, and ignorance. Just like the three colors, red, blue, and yellow, combined, we have nice computer screens now with 72,000 colors on them. But there's three primary colors that make all those colors up, red, blue, and yellow. So these three primary colors combine in different ways to create an infinite variety of colors. In the same way, these three gunas, they combine in different ways to have different effects on our consciousness. So, there's food in ignorance, there's food in passion, there's food in goodness. There's drinks in ignorance, drinks in passion, drinks in ignorance. There's places, Sedona, very nice place in goodness. Big cities, passion. And brothels, nightclubs, and so on, places of ignorance. So everything has its influence, time of day. Early morning, goodness. Middle of the day, passion, activity. End of the day, ignorance, sleep, or degraded behavior. And these gunas, how we associate with this material energy determines what kind of intelligence we have, what kind of knowledge we have, what kind of understanding we have, what we look to for our happiness and satisfaction. But this is a very important science. It's a science that can be studied anywhere in the world. How people deal with the material energy influences the kind of person that they are. Are you going to be honest or are you going to be a cheater? Are you going to be responsible or irresponsible? Are you going to work for yourself or are you going to work for the benefit of others? These are all influenced by the gunas, and these are all very important considerations in how our economy works. If we go back and look at history, say, with thousand years ago or maybe more. If we look at all the indigenous cultures around the planet, we find that they had a very easy way of life. They had a concept of egalitarianism. They were very careful to take care of each other, leave no person without. They would share whatever they had. There was no sense of personal possession. There was actually not even a sense of me as an individual, but there was more generally, I am a part of a group. The main identity was my group, my clan. So this reflects the qualities of sattva, or goodness. Through history, by the influence of kala, or time, in this yuga, this great period of time called Kali Yuga. The influence of this Kali Yuga is that goodness decreases and passion and ignorance are increasing. So we see that as the result of that, those influences over time, that these cultures of goodness, they're waning. The culture of passion is increasing. That's modern life. Passion means do, get, build, get more, right? And certainly that characterizes our modern society, building everything up. They want to, how do they say it? Unending growth, right? They want to have growth, more growth. And they run into a problem with the environmentalists, because environmentalists say you can't have unlimited growth in a finite planet. Huh? If everybody on the planet were to try to live like we do here in America, then we're going to need 4 or 5 or 6 planet Earths, however they count it. In other words, this way of life cannot be sustained. It's not sustainable. So there's a lot of good people. They're looking for how to deal with the environmental problem, how to deal with the problem of sustainability. But those people also are not asking the right questions. They don't understand the human aspect of the problem. One environmentalist, he was working very hard for several decades trying to save this forest and then that forest and then this stream. And he finally came to the conclusion after decades of work that it can't be done one forest at a time or one river at a time. We need some kind of wholesale change. 21 years ago, the Union of Concerned Scientists, these are a group of about 1,500 scientists, many of them, I think more than 600 Nobel laureates, and they issued a warning to humanity. Anybody remember that? 20 years back? Good. Right. Warning! We cannot continue to live on the planet the way we've been living. We're going to cause irreversible damage, and the planet will no longer be able to sustain life the way we know it. So something needs to be done. What do they say? We need a new ethic. We need a new way of understanding our relationship with this earth. This is urgent. It needs to be done now. Then 5 years later, in 1997, they issued another warning. They said, nothing's been done yet. Come on, get with it. But we haven't seen any real fundamental changes even in 20 years. So there are people who recognize what needs to be done. We need a new ethic. We need a new way of understanding our relationship with this earth, who we are. Where are you going to get one of those? I'm going to go down to Walmart and pick one up? They don't have it. Huh? Where are we going to get it? So everybody's scratching their head trying to figure it out. It's already there. It's given to us already in the Vedas. Because the Vedas give us a way of understanding ourselves as spiritual beings, what that spiritual being is, what the nature of the spiritual being is, and how that spiritual being can find the happiness and satisfaction that they seek by genuine ongoing spiritual activity. So, who's going to solve the problem? Not our leaders. Our vice president is over here in town today. They're having some kind of meeting or other. Undoubtedly, they're going to discuss the economy, right? What else can be on their mind? But I'm sorry they didn't invite me, so they're not asking the right questions.
Did you invite him? I thought he'd be here.
Yeah, I just found out this morning he was going to be here. That would have been nice, but yeah, I'm sure he had a conflicting engagement. Anyway, Mr. Biden, Mr. Obama, however well-meaning they might be, they're not asking the right questions. And so they can't lead us the direction that we need to go. This has to be, the solution has to be a grassroots effort where, you've seen the bumper sticker perhaps before. If the people lead, the leaders will follow, right? That's kind of how it's going to work. Because we can't depend on them. We have to understand the situation and make it our responsibility to change this world. And I'm very serious about that. It's not somebody else's job to do. There's nobody else that's going to come, no knight on shining armor, no guy in the white hat that's going to ride in and save the day. Huh? All of us have to put on the white hat, get on our horse, and do our part to make the changes that need to be changed. Beginning with the man, the woman in the mirror. So the gunas. Oh yeah, I lost my story. So we are going from goodness, the cultures of goodness, to passion, modern society. Now we're entering the period of tamagun, or gross ignorance. And the characteristic of that economically is exploitation. You've perhaps all heard the stories about the factory slaves making the Nike shoes or the iPhones, right? All the people working in the iPhone factory, somebody committing suicide that they had to build nets around the top of the building to prevent people from jumping off and killing themselves. So stressful is their work. And it's nice to have our iPhone because it's a really neat toy and it can do a lot of stuff. But it's having an impact, a very undesirable impact on people on the other side of the planet. And a lot of things are like that. You go in the shop, you find something nice. Oh, it's nice, and look at such a good price. How can you wonder, how can they even make it halfway around the world and send it over here, and then still they're going to sell it at a profit? What kind of boggles the mind? But it's going on. There's a consequence to that on the other side of the world. People, let's take Bangladesh for example. The Bangladesh rupee, last time I checked, it trades at about 60 rupees per dollar. They pay the Bangladeshi workers somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 rupees an hour. And they make them work 16-hour days, 7 days a week. The problem is, even in Bangladesh, you can't live on that much money. So the whole family has to be working all the time simply in order to eat. And we get some good stuff, we get nice stuff at a cheap price, more stuff than we can use. We fill our house, we fill our garage, and we rent storage space because we got all this nice stuff that we can't even use. Huh? Why? Because of I and mine. Unfulfilled spiritual need that I'm trying to satisfy with material things. It doesn't work. And we're on this hamster wheel like this, running, doing the same thing, and thinking that, okay, well, the system's a little broken, and we're going to fix it, and we're going to make it continue to do more of this same thing. Why? Because we're not looking at the whole picture. We're not connecting all the dots. We don't look at our plate of food when we go to a restaurant and wonder, where did that come from and what did it cost somebody else, maybe even their lives, the thing that's being eaten. This is called tamagun, or ignorance. Covered up. I don't want to know. Don't show me, because it's going to spoil my good time. If we continue like that, the good time for everyone is going to be spoiled, because the result of tamagun is destruction. Finished. It'll collapse. It cannot go on. It cannot go on. We don't need a crystal ball to understand that future. All we have to do is understand Bhagavad Gita, understand the nature of gunas, how they impact people, and what the result is. A lot of people are writing that modern America, or the modern West, is going through, or has gone through, and is going through the same rise and fall of civilizations that we've seen in all the preceding Western cultures. They get built up, and then they decline, and then chaos and destruction. And a lot of people, they give their opinion that we're in the final stages of that trend. What to speak is if we run out of oil. People talk about that peak oil. The oil is going to be decreasing, and then what? Because the whole thing is running on oil. So, we're facing very, very significant challenges that our leaders are not going to be able to give us the solution for. We have to be the solution. By our personal activity, by our understanding, by what we do to raise our own consciousness. So how are we going to do that? How do we raise the consciousness up? Ignorance, I told you, the quality of ignorance, this results in destruction. The quality of passion results in distress. And we can see that a modern civilization is basically characterized by these two qualities, goodness, or passion and ignorance. And the result is we have what, 25% or so of people taking psychotropic meds simply in order to be able to function day to day, even our children. So we have distress, we see this, the final throes of the economy, trying to keep it together. Goodness, the quality of goodness is what sustains things. Everything is sustained by goodness. This means, for example, you have a house. You have to repair it. You have to take care of it, right? If you don't, gradually, it's going to fall apart. We've all driven down the road. Sometimes you go past an old barn out in the field. It's just collapsing, right? Because there's no consciousness there. There's nobody maintaining it. And so it just collapses. That's the nature of this world. So, this world is sustained by goodness. And if we want to sustain this culture, we have to rise up to goodness. The gunas are a zero-sum game. When one goes down, the other one will come up, like that. The problem is, goodness has been going down, and ignorance is coming up. We need to reverse that trend. So how are we going to do that? There's several ways. One is that we can do activities in goodness. This is kind of like swimming upstream because our culture is in passion and ignorance, but it can be done. The main thing we can do is be careful about what we eat. Animal slaughter, meat eating, this is of the quality of ignorance. Tamagun. And it has its effect. 100,000, more than 100,000 animals are slaughtered every minute of every day, 365 days in the year, for people to eat unnecessarily. That's not counting the fish. Unnecessary violence leads to violence. It creates karma, and that karma is paid in the terms of personal suffering, economic problems, social problems, psychological problems. It's all connected. This world is all connected. We do something, we think we can do something over on this side of life, and it's not going to have an impact anywhere else. Because we live our lives, our Western lives are very compartmentalized. Right? We've separated our work from our spiritual activity, from our social activity. It's all compartmentalized, and so we live in each compartment at a time, but they're all connected. Whatever we do over here has an effect everywhere, because it affects consciousness. If I'm eating animal flesh, it dulls the consciousness. And the result is, in my economic things, I can't really understand what's right and wrong. If I can make more money any way whatsoever, that's good. Right? That's how I think when my consciousness is in Tamagum. So buy some more Monsanto stock. Make a lot of money from that. Don't worry about what they're doing to the planet. Everything we do is connected. And so, it can go this way or that way. If we want to raise it up, we have to act in goodness. This means vegetarian food. That has an effect on the economy, believe it or not. We don't need meat to live. In fact, if we stopped using animals for food, we would have much, much more food. There would not be any problem of survival. In fact, this world could support many, many more billions of people. They say, oh, what are we going to do in the year 2100? There's going to be, how many? 10, not even before that, there's going to be 10 billion people. So how are we going to feed all those people? Well, it's very simple. You stop eating animals, and you have plenty of food for all those people. So that changes my life, it changes my consciousness, and it changes my impact on the planet, especially for those animals. And it lifts up the consciousness of the whole place. There's other things that we can do. In goodness. We can get a little bit into yoga, Hatha yoga. It's become very popular now. A lot of people in America now do Hatha yoga. It's actually considered an exercise in sattva, or goodness. Weightlifting, barbells, this is passion and ignorance. No pain, no gain, right? This is ignorance. But Hatha yoga is in goodness. There's a group of yoga practitioners about 15, maybe 20 years ago now. They did a study to see what was the influence of doing yoga on a person's consciousness reflected in their gunas. They created a way of testing, a quantitative analysis of measuring people, goodness, passion, and ignorance. I think they called it the Vedic Personality Index. And so they did a controlled experiment. They had some people take the test. They got some score. And then they did Hatha yoga for 3 months and took the test again. And they saw, yes indeed, goodness went up, ignorance went down. So that's one way. And of course, Hatha yoga is one thing in goodness, but we can do other things in goodness as well. So that's one way to go about it. But there's a problem. There. The problem is that the nature of goodness, or sattva, is that in the beginning, it's not very attractive. Doing yoga exercises. I'd rather go play football. Right? That's what we say in America.
Very, very good.
My sister and I have done that for years.
Good. Testimonial. Anyway, and goodness is not very attractive in the beginning. But in the end, Krishna says it's like nectar. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Tamagun, or Rajagun rather, is the opposite. Rajagun, passion. In the beginning it's very nice. Go to the mall, get some stuff. It's great. I'd like to have some more stuff. Huh? But in the end, it creates distress. But we can't make that connection. We're not making the connection. That activity is creating my distress. We just say, my distress is coming from some psychological problem that I don't know, I can't deal with everything, so give me some Prozac, or something. It's connected. It's connected. So, how are you going to get people then to take up goodness when it's not very attractive in the beginning? That's the challenge. But if we understand the science and people are willing to listen to it and consider it and think about it, it's possible. But we have to have some campaign. We have to have some effort. We have to teach. We have to have, everybody has to share this knowledge and spread it around so that we can begin to take action in the right direction. Now, there's another way, though. I have a friend in Florida. He has a PhD in sociology. And he also created a quantitative analysis of the gunas. Again, a simple test. What do you like to do? What time of day are you active? What kind of foods do you eat? And so on like this. So he made his, let's call it also the Vedic Personality Index. Same thing. And what he did was he tested people with chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. He had a group of volunteers who didn't chant any mantra. That was the control group. He had another group of people that just chanted some meaningless mantra. Things go better with Coca-Cola. And then he had another group of people chanting Hare Krishna. They did that process for 30 or 90 days, whatever. Again, he gave them the test, and what did he find? Ignorance decreased, and goodness increased. They were chanting 20 minutes a day. That's all. Nothing else. Don't have to change anything. Just added this chanting to this mantra. Don't have to change your religion. Don't have to become a Hare Krishna, shave your head. No problem. Don't have to wear that stuff on your forehead. No. It works. It works. It can lift up ourselves. It can lift up the whole planet. There's a lot more science behind it. There's a lot more detail. And if you keep coming here, Dhanvesvara Prabhu, he will explain so much of that to you. You'll get to understand it in time. So, this is the way I'm presenting the problem. It's a problem of human consciousness. It's a crisis of human consciousness. Because we're living in Maya, in the darkness of ignorance, not understanding who I am in the world, how this world is functioning, what happens to me, and particularly we don't have any clue what happens to us at the time of death. That's a long time in the future. So there's a great need, not just for ourselves, but for everybody. And it's not our purpose to, like I said, to change people's religion. That's not the purpose. But we have to save this world. And unless we are willing to change ourselves, to do whatever I can to lift myself up, in this way, lift up everybody else around me, it's not going to happen. The Union of Concerned Scientists, they said, we have to create a movement, a great movement of people to change everything. And this is the movement that they're talking about. consciousness. Whatever way you can do it. Change your diet, change your exercise, chant mantra, do hatha yoga, any of it, all of it. That's what's actually going to make the difference. No, it's up to us. What are we going to do? As individuals, it's not something somebody else is going to do. We have to take the action. I'll stop there. Maybe you have some questions or comments.
I just have a comment about the hope for the youth, the 20-somethings, this younger generation, that there seems to be an enlightened consciousness around the planet, around Earth, around beingness and the sacredness of the planet. And so that offers hope.
Yeah, a lot of those youth are also confused. They see, look at this world, and they understand. Right, you go to college, you don't get a job anymore, right? You're going to have this big debt. You're not going to get a job, and they're afraid. They're concerned. What? What are we going to do? Huh? And their parents or elders were not giving them a lot of hope. Suicide, I mean, on one hand it's hopeful, but on the other hand there's a lot committing suicide. The suicide rate is increasing among young people. Actually, across the board, suicide is increasing. I just read the other day, suicide is increasing among the baby boomers, which is probably most of us. Anyway, what I observe is that there's some people that are getting it, and they're doing what they can to raise up, to make the change, and there's other people that are just clueless, or ignoring it, ignorance. And so we have to do our part to bring more people over to the can-do side and fix it.
But yet, leading by example and trying to help somebody find either a spiritual path or a new path or a positive path. How do you find the balance? Becoming a preacher, beating the dead horse, even though you're still showing by example. Where do you find that balance to change what's around you?
Are you asking me personally as an individual, or is that a rhetorical question for everybody?
A little bit of both.
Personally, I've written this book, Spiritual Economics, which basically explains what I've described to you tonight. And so I'm trying to raise understanding with that. I'm not the only person that can use that book in that way. Any of you could take that book and teach with it. And I'm happy to help with that. You can take the books at cost, and teach this material. The other part is we become the change that we want to see in the world, right? According to Mr. Gandhi, Mahatma, rather. And when we change, people will see. Oh, you've changed. What are you doing? You're happier than you used to be. How's that? And that's the best example, right? This is what we call multi-level marketing, right? We've all been there and done that. Sharing our personal story, our experience with people that we know, not with the motivation of trying to get something from them, but simply trying to offer what we have. We can do that, or we can take up the cause. Become a preacher or teacher, as you might prefer, and teach people how this world is working. It's a science. We can test it. You can test it on yourself. And you can see it expressed in so many ways throughout the world. So it's not really a question that I can answer for you. You all have to answer it for yourself. according to your own understanding. If your understanding is not complete or a little fuzzy, well, maybe hopefully I've generated some questions within you tonight that you'll continue to search for some answers, and then this will impel you forward to make those changes as you find out more information. But you know, I think one of the main catalysts is going to be that things are going to change. The future of this world is not going to be the same as the past. It's going to be different. Things are not going to be as easy, particularly if we experience this decline in oil production that they're talking about. Then everything becomes more expensive. How about food? Huh? Food's gone up, what? How much? 50% in the last 12 years. Something like that. Right? I come from Europe. And I come to the stores in America, and I remember the prices probably from 20 years ago. And I go in the store, I'm shocked. I've got sticker shock, you know. Anything I buy, and I wondered, how are people surviving? And, well, the answer is, right, 42 million people are on food stamps. That's how. Because they can't make it without that. Yeah. Well, almost 1/6 of our population, 1/8. Is that 1/8? No, 1/6. Yeah. Yeah. So that's food. Now here in Arizona, I was looking in the local paper today, they're talking about water shortages. We need food, we need water, we need a house over our heads. And how many people lost their house over the last 4 years, right? Living in their car now. So those things are going to become very difficult. And people are going to be crying, what do we do? Help us, right? They're marching in the street, the Occupy movement. It's not fair. You got more money than what you need, and we're all starving here. They don't give a damn. Sorry. They don't. They've set up this system to work, and it's working exactly the way they want it to work. This is the demonic consciousness. So much is mine today, and I'll get more according to my schemes. And where am I going to get it from? You, because you have money. I want your money, right? What did they do in Cyprus? They just went in everybody's bank account and took it. And if you've seen the articles, they say your FDIC is not really going to protect you over here. They may do the same thing here. So, my perception is that when the screws get tightened enough, people are going to start crying and they're going to ask, what can we do? Well, generally when things get really tough, people do turn to God. God, save us. Why? Because nothing else seems to be able to save us, so gosh, let's pray, you know. So, we want to give them this prayer. Because it's not just a prayer of, give me, Lord, I need something. This prayer is, Lord, how can I serve you? And the nice thing about that is, the Lord reciprocates. We serve Him, and He'll serve us. That's how it works. That's the system. Now we're trying to do it without God. God's not in the picture. That's not working. Right? So, that's another missing element besides consciousness, besides Shiva, God, Bhagavan. Yes.
You mentioned the workers in Bangladesh a while ago. I don't know if everybody is even aware of one of the consequential results of our so-called cheap materials that happened in Bangladesh 2 days ago. Because the media,
right.
The media has almost ignored it because they do not want us to be conscious.
Right. Did everybody hear the news?
No.
Approximately, probably more than 300 young girls.
There was a garment factory caught on fire.
They were told, the workers were told that they knew that the building was cracked, severe cracks from 5 stories down. And the other offices, the bank offices and things like that were closed. Nobody went in. But these thousands of girls were told that if they did not go to work that day, they would get no pay for the entire month, and that's $57, I think, for most of them. But they went, and 300 were crushed to death, and 1,000.
Oh, the building collapsed.
Yes.
I'm thinking of the one, what was that, a year ago perhaps, or some time back,
Fire.
where the
Last
fire
year.
was,
Last
right?
year.
And they had the doors locked.
Right.
Slaves, you're slaves, you can't get out of here. And so they burned to death. Huh? So these girls got
This was
crushed.
just 2 days ago.
I also heard that they have nets around the edge of the roof because so many people jump off the roofs to kill themselves and try to catch them in the nets.
Yeah. So there's, you know, we're getting to the information age. We can find out about this stuff, and it should, if we have enough sattva, create a little pang in our conscience. Right? We say, I can't support that anymore.
I always have, you know, looking at all the woes and issues around economic realities and truth and goodness and justice and all those things. I always get down to this basic question, which I can never quite answer, which is, what is money? Because, you know, you used to have a gold standard, and who wants gold anyway? You can't eat it. You know, what is gold? It's pretty, but, and I always think we need to move beyond money. And nowadays, money is little numbers on my computer in a place that says it's my bank, and I can take a picture of a check and send it there, and it's not real. And so it's just bizarre. It freaks me out.
Next month, about a month from now, I'm going to speak at a conference in Copenhagen. A conference is titled The Post-Green Economy. And it's basically going to be a conference about the gift economy, which is not using any money at all, but everybody giving to each other. So instead of taking, I take from everybody as much as I can. No, we should turn it around. I give to everybody as much as I can. If you'd like to read more about that, there's a wonderful book, which is similar title to mine, called Sacred Economics. That man, the author, he's going to also be speaking at this conference, but he speaks about the gift economy, and he really walks his talk. I went and saw him speak in Amsterdam, and he doesn't charge any speaking fee. He pays for his own airfare. It just depends on the goodness of the people. They give donations, whatever they give. That's what he's satisfied with. So anyway, he's written several good books. Charles Eisenstein. And anyway, read his Sacred Economics. He's a very good speaker. I think you can probably find him on YouTube also. So he's talking about the gift economy. But at this conference, you know, I have to bring the spiritual element, because how are you going to get people from where we are to there? Now, little groups, we have a gift economy, right? Our birth family, or our blood family members, right? So Dhanvesvara's brother is here. He's not charging you for food while you're here, right? Huh? Out of love, share what we have. But we only extend that so far to our blood relations, and maybe not to all of them. Right? Depends, you know, that cousin. So it requires a change of consciousness. To give up this aham mameti, I am, it's mine, to nirmama, yeah, everything belongs to God. Everything does belong to God. It's His world. He created it. He controls it. And He put us here. So we're allowed to take what we need. As a Father, God the Father, we say, He gives us what we require. But if we take more than what we need, then we create an imbalance. And that's what's going on. This great disparity where we have 350 billionaires have the same net worth as the poorest 50% of people on the planet. They have more than they can use, and the other people, 1 billion people, wake up every day not knowing where their food's going to come from. You know, digging through the garbage heaps. So this is a result of tamagun, ignorance. And if we understand this simple arrangement, how this world works, we can begin to act in the ways that will make the difference. We all have our part to play.
have a question. Do you think that in the last 15 or 20 years, people who think differently have increased, even though it is not as large as we would like it to be, and that there is some kind of ripple effect that you talk about is happening and taking place here in the world, and therefore, there are like so many, how many million centers that we had in that Thrive movie, all around the world. They're doing different kind of work to raise consciousness and also uplift people, and all that is going on, and it's a lot more than, like, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
Sure.
So already this process is going on.
Right.
But my question is this: at some point you said Obama and Biden are not asking right questions. What do you suggest that question should be? What questions should they be asking? Because I think they are at heart very good people, and they have the concerns of people at heart.
Yeah, I'm not questioning their sincerity at all.
Yeah, so what kind of questions would you suggest?
The point is what I tried to say at the beginning. We're all conditioned by the culture that we're raised in.
Yeah.
This culture gives us a certain set of ideas, and we're creating the problems with that, and we're trying to look in that same set of ideas for the solution. But we can't get it. We're not finding it. So this is why I'm suggesting that this Vedic culture, it gives us the concepts that we need to be able to see it in a different light, in a different way, and we go, oh, yeah, that's how I saw it. So, there's people, like you said, there's people all over the world who are doing what they know to make a difference. That's how it's going to happen. It's not a matter of what one individual does, but collectively it will make the difference. It will tip the balance. The 101st monkey, is that right? 100th monkey? Okay. Something like that, right? So, yeah, we need a lot more monkeys. We need a couple billion monkeys to shift the balance.
I believe in people's power, definitely. That's what I talk about. So anyway, but that is an effort from one side, but also that people's power impacts politicians because they control our lives, whether we like it or not. We have to pay taxes, we have to abide by rules that are being implemented. So we cannot just flout everything. So if some effort came from that side, and with their good intentions, that would be something that would be more profitable for society at large.
We have to do our part, We write to our politicians, suggest these things to them. It's a matter of raising consciousness. It's one person at a time. So,
Look at the background checks. It's 90% people are pro-background checks for weapons, and they couldn't even speak about it in the halls of Congress. So that's corporations controlling, or organizations, as in the NRA, controlling our politicians, but our voice isn't being heard.
yeah. Again, it's a matter of consciousness. What consciousness, how is it going to tip the balance? Let me give you an example. If we go back to the 60s, most of you are, I think, are of age at that time, we had a lot of crisis in America. And things were, it was the first time really in America, let's say in modern America, in the 20th century, that we had such social unrest. And what happened? What happened? In the 60s, there was all those problems. In the 70s, they seemed to get solved. In the 80s, everything kind of went back to the way it was. My personal opinion is that there was some saints on the planet who were able to lift the consciousness. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to become a spiritual person, but they may start thinking differently. So, anyway, that's my opinion. Whether it was happened like that or not, who knows? But I'm suggesting that is the formula for the future.
You spoke a little while ago of the question of need, and that seems to me one of the more difficult problems in thinking of a future economy where perhaps people are giving to each other and so on, living together as a group. How do you determine what the need of one person is compared to the need of another? One might need a private study, another might need a trip to India, or and who is to say that they don't need it? And who is to how do you determine need? How do you deal with need?
I've been the end result of my spiritual and economics thesis is a gift economy based on service to the Lord. In the gift economy, a lot of people challenge that how's that going to work, because if everything's just free, then some people are just going to come and take, and then others won't have enough. So they may think, well, this is my need. I want this and this. So this is a challenge that arises. So they may think they need more. Okay, so who's going to determine that? My answer to this question is that every individual has to determine their own need. Okay? We can afford some percentage of people taking more than what they need. Right? We already have the 1% taking a hell of a lot more than what they need. So, and actually, I did a calculation one time. If we took the gross national product of the entire world and divided it among all the people in the world, the average income would be, it was either $10,000 or $20,000. I forget what. Anyway, at that time, it would have been enough money for everybody to survive. So what is my need? If I'm spiritually deficient, let's say, if I'm spiritually hungry, I'm trying to scratch that itch by getting stuff. But it doesn't work. But if there's a significant percentage of the population who are giving me an example how to be satisfied, then there's something for that person to look at and say, they don't have this problem. Maybe it's just my problem. Or maybe I have a problem, first of all, that all that's trying to get and it's not satisfying me. Maybe look at them. So my answer to the question is every person can determine what they need. And when the culture is oriented toward that, then, and people, especially if children are acculturated in that way from the time they're young, how to be satisfied, how to be a fulfilled person, that it doesn't come from having just stuff, then the culture will shift, and it'll become a very natural thing. We have examples of this in a lot of cultures around the world. What we call the Eskimos. These people live in the tundra, in the barren north. They had, years back, a subsistence economy. What did they need? They needed each other. That's what they needed. They needed to have access to the water, to fish. They needed to have land to be able to gather their food. Not land in terms of, but space, because there's only so many animals. So that's what they needed. They didn't need stuff. And there's many other examples of cultures like that. They were able to function that way because that was their heritage. They were trained like that from the time they were children. So even when the benevolent government came from the south to try to tell them how to divide their land and develop a sense of eye and mind, most of them didn't want it, and it actually destroyed their culture. So we want to go back the other way. There's a history. We know the history, how it was destroyed. We just have to put it in reverse. Go back the other way And as I mentioned, I think we're going to get help with that. Because there's going to come to a time when money is either not going to be there or it's going to be meaningless. And then how am I going to survive? With the help of my friends. If I need you and you need me, we got help. It's not me against the world. So we take care of each other. We learn how to serve each other. And it'll be a happier world too. Because that's what we want. We want to have close, nice relationships. Meaningful relationships. Parents spend more time today shopping than they do with their kids in this country. So the things that we say are actually important to us, the things that give meaning to our lives and actually give us genuine happiness. We're not getting those. Instead, we're working too much and getting stuff as a compensation price. We get some electronics, but that really doesn't fill the need.
Your idea about acquiring stuff, if you will, and in a very consumer-driven, consumerism society, I can certainly understand that. But how do you work out with people in society spiritually that it isn't just the acquisition of stuff that one would spend one's money on? Because people are spending their money on education for their kids, best hospital care for my mother, and if I don't acquire to have enough funding to give the very best, whatever that is, then there's an inherent protect my family, protect my kids driver that isn't satisfied.
Right.
And I'm trying to understand how the consumerism stuff. Yeah, that's fine. But it's when you get down to these other really core, personal, family-driven, family value situations. How do you say, don't worry about it?
What you're addressing is actually the fundamental nature of the way our economy functions. How do we get the things that we need? And as you correctly state, it's not just stuff. We have many other needs besides that. A roof over our heads, predominant, food, education for our children, and so on. This economy did not develop the way it is by chance. It was created specifically to require the effort of people to make money for somebody else. Okay? The capitalist system is arranged so that people work to make the 1% rich. They're the owners of the corporations. Right? They have most of the stock. So they have what we call, in the accounting profession, unearned income. Right? They didn't work for it. They just get the right to skim the wealth of the society. It's created that way deliberately. So that people don't know how they're actually being exploited. The perfect slave thinks that he's free. So, naturally, we have many needs that go beyond consumer goods. How are we going to satisfy those needs? That conversation is beginning to develop. This conference that I'll be going to, talking about the gift economy. This is mainly going to be attended, they say, by young people who are trying to figure out the future. When the internet first came around, I Googled the words gift economy back in 1997, 98, like that. Got about 20,000 links. If you Google gift economy today, you're going to get, I forget, tens of millions. It's in the conversation. People are talking about it because they recognize that nobody can cheat in a gift economy. Right? This system is created to cheat. It's designed for that, especially the stock market. It's just a gambling casino. Right? So, it's serving its purpose very well. Now, what are we going to do about that? Because that system doesn't serve us. So, here's the thing. They created this game called money. Coming back to ask the question about money. They created this game, money, and here's the rules. I'm the banker. You're the people. The rules are simple. I win and you lose. So we play the game of money, and then all of a sudden, oh, we have a depression. I'm sorry. Oh, shucks, we're doing whatever we can. We'll get it together. Hold on. Just 5 more years, the economy will get going again. And we say, oh, great. Let's play the game of money again. And everybody says, oh, yeah, money. Good. Right? And we go on for another 25, 30 years. And there's, oh, it's a recession. I'm sorry. Only 10% of you lose your house this time or your business. What can we do? It's the business cycle. Shucks. Let's hang in there. We're going to get it together, right? And then we get it together. We say, okay, let's play the game of money again. And everybody goes, yeah, money. What's wrong with this picture? It doesn't serve us. Huh? They created the rules to serve them, whoever they are. It's not really important who they are. I'm not advocating that we're going to go get, our torches and go hang them bastards. There's a lot of people talking like that, but that's not really going to solve the problem because there's other guys that will just come and take their place. Right? We have to raise the consciousness. That's the solution.
If I could just really quickly just
Sure.
add a story about, when you speak that way, I'm certainly with you. The enormity of that change boggles my mind. I was with an older gentleman once walking a line, and he told me a story about his parents who came over here from Germany back probably mid-late 1800s. And his dad was a shoemaker, leather shop person in this small village, only one there. And his mother always told the story that one day her husband came back and home and said, look, I've got this really good idea for the belts I'm making. I can charge an extra 2 marks. No one will know, everything will be fine, we'll have more money. And his wife, and this is the point of the story, this fellow's mother, always said, I told my husband you can't do that because the people of the village will know that we have more money.
This is the difference between rajas, right? The men, passion, get more, and goodness, do what's right.
Yes.
Good story.
Well, you have to switch over to different economy, but I'm always impressed when I was hearing the story of, like, say, the Native American Indian culture, which was a gift economy, for instance. They would feel like they would want to give as much as they can to the other people. They would have these big festivals where they would do that.
This is called the potlatch.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they
So-
just do it up the coast here in
Yeah.
Vancouver. Yeah. Everybody know about the potlatch? Wonderful example. I think you pronounce it the Coquatill tribe, the natives of Vancouver Island. And they had what they called the potlatch several times a year. And the purpose of the potlatch was to have a competition to see who could give the most away. And so people would work for 3 months making as much as they can, whatever their skill was. And then they'd have this whole heap of stuff. And then they would have a competition. Who's going to give the most away? And they would give everything away until everybody said, thanks, I got enough, I don't need any more. Right? And if anything was left over, they would burn it. And then they would, again, work to give things away. And their economy worked very well.